Hi, how are you doing?
Not too bad, yourself?
I'm good. What's your name?
My name is Matt Murphy, Matthew Murphy.
Nice to meet you, Matthew.
Nice to meet you.
Um, where was you born?
I was born in Stoughton, Massachusetts, but I grew up in Easton and Brockton.
That's nice. Well, I would like to know, were you enlisted or drafted to the war?
I was enlisted. The draft ended in the 70s, so I'm way older than you guys, but a little too young for that.
Oh, okay. How did you feel when you got drafted?
When I joined,
Yeah, when you joined.
well, that was something I always wanted to do, and I had almost joined when I was younger, and when I was 17, I almost enlisted in the Marine Corps, and then I didn't do it, and I came back and joined when I was 23, and I was really glad that I had actually done it, after talking about it for so long.
How did your family or siblings feel about this?
They were a little worried, but, proud and happy for me. They knew it was something I wanted to do.
All right. What do you used to do before you joined?
I was a construction worker and a part-time college student.
Have you ever had any family members in the military?
Yes, my father, my grandfathers, a couple of my uncles, my cousin was a Marine, and just me and my cousin in this generation, though.
Were you guys in the same camp?
No, it was all, my cousin was in about 10 years or more before me, and nobody else besides me and my cousin were in the Marines, so we never really, I didn't go to the same places they went to or anything.
So no family members of yours was in the same military as you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just my cousin, but he was a reservist on the East Coast, and I was an active duty guy on the West Coast.
Okay, cool.
How did you feel about the training?
It was good. I thought boot camp would be tougher, but it was still plenty tough. Just more mental stress than physical.
How did you get to adapt to the military life?
It's like sink or swim. You either it's like being thrown in the water. You either swim or you sink, and that's how it is when you join the military. And there's a lot of people that don't swim and they sink right out. They get kicked out quickly, or they just have a miserable time for as long as they're in. The way I felt about it, yeah, and I was a volunteer. I wanted to be there. The way I felt about it, and the way most people felt about it, was, even if you don't like being in the Marines, you're in it, so do the best that you can.
Where did you serve?
I served in Iraq during the invasion, and then I spent more time in Iraq as a civilian, as a security contractor after getting out.
What highest rank did you achieve?
I was a corporal in the Marine Corps. That's a E4. It's the 4th enlisted rank.
That's cool. Were there many casualties in your unit?
No, where we assaulted during the invasion, we went into Iraq on the first day, and we were way down south, a place called Qasr, Iraq, with the British Marines, and it was really far from where Saddam Hussein's people were from, and everybody down there was like a different religious group than Saddam, and they hated him, and the guys that were down there, they were draftees, they were forced to be in the military, and they really didn't want to fight us, and we had overwhelming firepower. We had still a tragedy. We only had one person killed during the invasion in our whole unit of 3,000 people.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
It was tough back then. We had letters, and this is like right when email was really getting common for everybody, and we still wrote letters. I wrote a ton of letters. I still saved, I have a bunch of them now, although a lot of them blew away in a sandstorm, unfortunately. But and then we got a little bit of access to email towards the end, and we had a reporter let us use his satellite phone one time to call home. I think it was Newsweek magazine, because we let him stay in like our little secure area with us.
Did you always get a response back from them?
Yeah, everybody was really good, and people I never even met, were writing letters, and somebody like my mom's friend's husband's brother, was a Marine 20 years ago, and people like that would write letters and everything and send stuff. It was pretty cool. They were really supportive.
Was there something special or something that you do or did or bring with you for good luck when coming?
I brought my dad's pistol with me, and it must have brought me good luck. I never had to fire it.
Cool.
So where were you when the war was ended?
Well, the Iraq War kind of really ended around 2009, 2010, when pretty much the fighting was done. And I was still in Iraq at that time, working as a civilian with I was working for the Army Corps of Engineers, doing security work for them. So I wasn't involved in the fighting, anymore, but it had kind of gotten less violent and less violent and less violent for years. And as the American military was slowly pulling out, and so I saw the troop levels go away, I kind of witnessed the whole buildup, and, as a spectator, I witnessed like the whole buildup and then withdrawal of, massive amounts of forces in Iraq. And they're still kind of going on, but it's, Iraqi on Iraqi now, and you couldn't really call it like, warfare exactly, more like terrorism against each other.
Then how did you return home?
When I came home from after the invasion with the Marine Corps, we flew home. Well, we'd come over to Kuwait on a ship. The way Marines usually do. We're just out, floating around for 6 months at a time on ships, and in case there's an emergency somewhere in the world. And the invasion of Iraq just happened to fall right within my unit's normal deployment schedule when we'd be on a ship anyway. So we got on our ships, went out to that part of the world, got out in Kuwait, went, fought, came back, got on the ships, but we actually ended up flying out of Iraq into Kuwait on C-130, Air Force plane.
Are there any other wars did you serve in?
Nope, I never made it to Afghanistan.
How long did you serve in the Iraq War?
As a civilian, in the Marines, I was there for exactly 5 weeks, so it was incredibly quick. And I remember leaving on that plane, flying out of a Iraqi Air Force base, going, never be back here again. And then like a year later, I was driving back in. 2 years later, I was driving back into that same base, as a civilian in a pickup truck.
What did you do in the days and weeks afterward when you came back home?
Well, there wasn't much for us to do. I was in a platoon that I was in the battalion security platoon, which is kind of like an oddball platoon, and there wasn't really anything for us to do just back in normal peacetime environment. So the platoon was disbanded, and a lot of my friends were getting out. Friends were getting out of the Marines all the time, and those of us that were staying, we got sent out to do like different jobs and stuff. And I ended up working in an office, like the operations, it's called the S3, it's like the battalion operations office for about 5 or 6 months until I got out. It was a big adjustment. I really, really didn't want to do it at all, but it ended up being a really good experience.
Do you recall any particular humorous or unusual events?
Tons and tons and tons, That's one of the great things about military life, is there's something funny going on all the time. You have a bunch of bored people who, there's kind of no limit to what you might say to each other. And one of the funniest things I can remember, although there were many, we were given the job of, we had to dispose of, there was this warehouse sort of thing, and it was full of like artillery shells and stuff like that, like explosives, that belonged to the Iraqi army. And we couldn't leave it. We had to stay there, because if we left it, some bad guys might find it, use it for bombs to blow us up or whatever. So, they told us that we couldn't leave until all that stuff had been destroyed, and we were supposed to wait for the explosive ordnance disposal people to come and get it and destroy it. Now we're talking about like a big, not a huge warehouse, but a good-sized ton of, bunch of explosives. And they were coming and taking one little truckload at a time over like, the course of a few days. It's, like a week or so. So it didn't take very long before we started like ripping these things open ourselves and taking them out and piling them in a big circle and, lighting them on fire with Bic lighters and stuff and just blowing them up ourselves. And that was a lot of fun, and it was also pretty funny because the Iraqi locals that lived around there would come and they'd watch it with us and everything. And our lieutenant, our platoon commander, came out one time. Well, I think he started coming out all the time, or he might have made a stop after this, but he came out to watch it, and we had piled like all these explosives. Now they're not going to explode, they're just going to burn like crazy in huge fireballs. We piled them in this pit, and we were like, hey sir, you need to stand back. It's, don't get that close. This is pretty cool when it goes off. You don't want to be very close. And he was like, yeah, and he was standing up on this big like dirt mound, kind of a little closer than any of us were to it. And when we lit it off, there was this huge fireball, and he just came like jumping back and stumbling, and he fell down, and he got up laughing because he should have listened to us. And he used to be enlisted too, so he had a pretty good sense of humor about things like that. But there's just a million things.
So, your experience during the war changed your way of living in the world?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think stuff like that changes everybody. One thing that happens to almost everybody is you get more vigilant. You know what I mean? You get more alert, and you definitely. I spent a long time in an environment where like anything could kill you, and now I'm talking about both as a Marine and as a civilian security guy, right in the same exact place. And used to be like coming back and driving. I spent like 3 months in Iraq driving up and down the roads where everything could explode or somebody could be shooting at you at any time. And, I'd be jumpy, like I hate being stuck in traffic, and I'd be really, really alert, and I watch the side of the road, constantly. A lot of people have, we get like pulled over, for driving, weaving back and forth, trying to stay away from things on the road. I was driving over the Bourne Bridge from Cape Cod, a few years back, and for whatever reason, like the way you drive over like the little metal pieces, it sounded exactly like gunfire, like these sharp cracks, like crack, 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 and I was like, oh, I'm in Cape Cod. That's probably not gunfire, That's probably not rifle rounds being fired, And I think it's like that for a lot of people, like almost everybody, and it kind of goes away over time, and eventually, you adjust to anything, and it wasn't like that for me in later years, but that's real common with people.
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
Oh yeah, tons. I mean, that's the best thing about the military. Well, that and jumping out of helicopters and shooting guns and all that. That's probably the best thing.
Did you continue any of those relationships?
Yep, I just went to my old roommate's wedding about 2 months ago, something like that. I see those guys all the time. Well, I shouldn't say all the time, but on my way into school today, I was talking to my old team leader from the Marines on the phone. We talk to each other. A bunch of us stay in touch all the time. It's been 10 years now, and we still talk frequently.
Is there anything that you learned from your military service?
A lot of things, but it's hard to say. Like habits, kind of. You establish habits and like a way of doing things that kind of stays with you. Like you plan, and if you have to be somewhere like on a plane, you're gonna be there like 2 hours early. Girlfriends and stuff like that will always get mad. I'll give you an example. Like I went on a camping trip earlier this year. Went canoeing up in Maine with my 2 friends who are also Marines and their friend who was in the Army and a couple other guys. And I told my girlfriend, watch, this is going to be like a waterproofing contest, like we're going to show up, because I had all my stuff in like waterproof bags inside my pack, like the Marine Corps standard way of doing things when you're out in the water. And you know, we show up there, and sure enough, my two buddies have the same exact thing, you know, done. Their friend who was in the Army has the same exact thing done. Like, you could have taken any of our stuff and just thrown it right in the water, and it would have been fine. Like, nothing would have happened to anything. And then, like, a month later, my girlfriend and I went camping with another friend who had been an Army officer. And I started telling him that story, and his wife said something like, "Oh, you too, huh?" You know, and he pulls out his pack, and he's got the same thing, like everything's waterproofed. He's just laughing, you know, and like things like that. You establish like habits and like, you know, kind of following a system, you know, a systematic way of doing things, and you know, you apply that to a lot of stuff. You know, being prepared ahead of time.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
I mean, I could talk all day. Nothing comes to mind right off the top of my head. You know, I mean, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands. I think it might even been 1 million people passed through Iraq and Afghanistan now by this time. And, you know, it's definitely like changed everybody, you know. Experiences like that do change people. And in a way, I mean, it would be better off for everybody if we hadn't had these wars, but it's kind of, you know, my father's generation, everybody was a veteran, you know, and it's not like that anymore. You know, my grandfather's generation, everybody had fought in World War II or Korea or something like that. And I do kind of like the idea of all these, you know, combat veterans, you know, back in the United States, you know, kind of a new generation, you know. I think it's, you know, it's a high price to pay for, you know, having people like that, you know, what everybody had to go through. But I think it's good to have that kind of experience, you know, as a nation too.
So earlier you mentioned that you had to work as a security. I would like to know, how is it different from being a soldier in the Army?
Well, it was like, I have to correct you, I was a Marine in the Marine Corps. Otherwise another Marine might see this someday and track me down and, you know, make me do push-ups or something. But, you know, it was kind of like, I got out of the Marines and, you know, I went right back to work doing construction, and I traveled a little bit, and I was watching everything on TV that was going on in Iraq still, and I was seeing like people I knew. I saw, you know, Justin Rettenberger, you know, a buddy of mine, you know, from my old platoon, yelling orders on Fox News during a gunfight, you know, and all this stuff was going on, and I felt like, you know, what am I doing? I was right down the street from here renovating a Stop and Shop on Morrissey Boulevard, and you know, not really finding the same satisfaction in that I did, you know, in the military. So after about a year, actually exactly a year to the day after I got out of the Marines, I took a job as a security contractor back in Iraq. And it was, you know, it's very, very different, but very, very similar too, you know. It was the same exact type of people. You know, all of a sudden I was back around, you know, guys with the same background as me. You know, very familiar environment where, you know, I've been working with guys before that doing construction who, you know, they thought they were big tough guys because they were construction workers, and it's like, you know, you're a 45-year-old dude with bad knees and a huge belly, you know, frankly, I'm not that impressed. And I remember seeing this kid, Nick Berg, that he got his head cut off in Iraq, and, you know, he was someplace that he probably shouldn't have been. Well, he definitely shouldn't have been there because they cut his head off. But, you know, and it was on the cover of all the newspapers and everything. And I was sitting there reading this article, you know, in the Boston Herald. And the guys that I was working with were going, "Oh, I bet you're glad you're not there anymore." And I went, "Actually, I kind of wish I was, you know." And these two guys were like, "Oh, yeah, sure you do." You know, like, I must be lying because nobody would want to be there. And I just thought, like, I was thinking, like, you guys have no idea, you know. And it was nice to be back around people who, it wasn't a crazy idea that you might want to be in a combat zone, you know, that they actually understood that and felt the same way, and, you know, like, placed value on, you know, the ability to handle yourself, you know, in combat, and had the same kind of skills, and, you know, cared about, like, integrity and courage and things like that. And so it was great to be back in that environment, you know. And we're also, you know, you had a lot more freedom sort of in the way that you lived. You know, you didn't have, we have, we call it the big boys rules, like nobody's gonna make you, shave your face every day or whatever, but if you don't do your job, you're on a plane home, And in the Marine Corps and the Army, they can't do that, all the branches, they can't just say, well, we don't like you, so pack your bags and you're gone out of here tomorrow. You're stuck with the guy unless they do something, really bad. So you could have a much more relaxed environment because everybody was responsible for their own discipline and their own performance and everything. And, the living conditions were a lot better and nobody was coming in and, making you pick up cigarette butts at 6 in the morning even though you don't smoke, things like that. That was good. But we also had a lot less support, like we kind of had ourselves, some relatively light weapons and that was about it, And the military would eventually get there to help you, but it might be too late, and for a lot of people, that came too late or, they weren't ever able to get that help. And so it was trade-offs, And the other thing, what we were doing was important. We were protecting people that were blowing up all Saddam Hussein's old munitions and explosives and things like that, so the bad guys couldn't get their hands on them. But we weren't fighting the war. We weren't doing what the military was doing, and so I think it was less satisfying. I know for me it was. You were paid a lot more and you lived a lot better, but you didn't have that same sense of accomplishment. Or I didn't feel like it. And, I think a lot of guys that spent that same time frame that I was as a security contractor, guys who were in the military during that time, it's like they're jealous of me and I'm jealous of them, and the grass is always greener type of thing. But, it was good. It was overall a really good experience, just, bad things happen, that's why they needed us, because bad things were happening all the time. And it was funny, I fired my weapon more times and was around more, danger and death and killing as a civilian than I was in the Marine Corps. That always kind of struck me as funny, in a way. Not really supposed to work like that.
One more question.
We're just gonna stop and restart.
From all these experiences, have you ever think back of going to war for the Marines?
Do I think about
going back to the Marines?
Sometimes, yeah, actually, if I didn't find a job as a security contractor, because I was missing that environment big time, and I wasn't like adjusting well to being back home. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to be away from all that was going on. I felt like, something big was going on and I wasn't a part of it. So I think if I didn't end up finding that security job and staying in that line of work, being back over in Iraq that way, I probably would have gone back in the Marines, or probably maybe, I was going to say I might have joined the Army, but this is being recorded, so I'm not going to say that. But it's easier, that's why. And a friend of mine, my friend Bobby Seisenbath, a guy that was in my platoon, he ended up going back in the Marines just for a year and doing a single deployment. They actually called him up, because they can, you have a total of 8 years of commitment, and it's usually 4 years active duty, 4 years inactive for most people. And so they can call you back up. And my friend Bobby got a call and they said, yeah, we need you to come in here, you're being mobilized. And he just said, Bobby's not here, man, and hung up. And then he called back and he was like, no, really, do I have to come back? And they said, no, not really, you don't have to, but, you could if you wanted to. And he ended up going back in after that, He did like a year in the Marines again and went back to Iraq. I mean, there's been a bunch of people that have done that, and I might have done that too, if I were still sitting home watching it on TV all the time, feeling left out, feeling like I was missing out on the big show, then I might have done it too.
What were some of the pranks that you or others will pull?
Oh man, I can't think of one that comes to mind right now that, okay, I'll tell you one. I didn't do this, my friend did this, my friend Mark did this to another guy. Like I was saying earlier, anything goes pretty much, like you're bored, you know, it's a bunch of guys, 30 people that know each other incredibly well, and you know, you can get get away with a lot of stuff. So we were on our ship, and we had we had mops for cleaning. You know, we had one mop for the kind of like the big room on the ship that we lived in. Our our berthing area is called, and then we had another room for the bathrooms, or on the ship you call them the head, and we called it the head mop. And now picture 30 guys sharing like a relatively small bathroom area, and how disgusting it is after 6 months, even though we're Marines and cleaned it every day. And picture how disgusting that mop might be, Yeah. Not that clean. And we had this other guy, Briggs, that he would take these long showers like he was getting ready to go out for the night or something, and we're floating around in the middle of the ocean. And he just, he got himself all pretty, and he's coming back in with his towel on. He's got his little, what are those, little squeezy things with the soap, yeah, the little spongy thing. And right as he comes in, my friend Mark goes whap and nails him across the chest with that disgusting mop, like just reeking like, urine and God knows what. And, he was just filthy again instantly, and had to turn right around and go back in there. That's definitely one of the funniest things I saw. And it's also, one of the few that I'm willing to actually talk about on camera, especially since I didn't do it. But, I mean, there's just so many things, and I'm not willing to say many of them on camera.
Well, while on duty or service, what did you think of your officers or fellow soldiers?
You mean as people, or how they were,
Yeah, how their duty compared to yours, and how they were soldiers, and higher rank.
Yeah, I mean, people are people, like, there were guys that were around my rank that were great, and could have done anything. There were guys that were terrible at their jobs, and, it would have been nice if we could have just put them in a box and mailed them home. But and the same for the officers, the same for our leadership. There was some that I really, really resented and didn't like at all. I basically hated their guts. Then there were others that the majority I liked and respected, for the officers. I actually tended to like some of the officers a lot more than I liked some of the senior enlisted guys. Our platoon commander, the guy who was in charge of us, his name was Matt Nichols, and he had been a corporal in the infantry, just like we were, and he had already been to college before he joined the Marines, so he ended up going back to do officer training and coming back and being an infantry platoon commander, and that was great. I mean, he had, unfortunately for him, he had to grow up a little bit. He couldn't act exactly the way we acted. He still had to be the boss, but having somebody like that like knew, he had done your job. You know what I mean? He knew exactly what it was like. And he was just a good guy. He didn't think of himself as like better than us. He's the boss, but it doesn't mean he's like king of the world type of thing. He never acted like that, and most of them were like that. I liked and respected the majority of the officers that we had, and definitely the majority of guys, that were, my rank and stuff, and even higher enlisted. But there were definitely a few senior enlisted people, and I won't name names, but were just lazy, and they were terrible at their jobs when we were back home in California. They were terrible at their job in Iraq. They were lazy before, they were lazy during, and you think that like war would bring out the best in people, and it really doesn't. It just brings out what's there, and people that were worthless before we went to war were worthless during it and worthless afterwards, and it didn't really change them at all, Some people probably, but.
Well, when you came back to the real world and normal world, did you join a veterans organization?
No, I didn't, ever. And I feel kind of bad about that because you know, and everybody does. You know, my generation just doesn't do that, you know. And they really, you know, like the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Marine Corps League, they would really love to have more new members because most of their guys are, you know, Vietnam era or older, you know, World War II generations now dying off, and the Korean War veterans too. But it just kind of wasn't our thing, you know, and some places, you know, it's still going strong, but I've just never really got involved in it, and likewise, most of my friends didn't either, really. You know, it's also easier for us now to like kind of associate with other veterans, you know, than, you know, we don't necessarily have to go to like one central club to do that, you know, like just with like Facebook and cheap air travel and everybody having a car, you know. It's funny, like most of the people that I hang out with now to this day are still like, even if I didn't know them before, like end up hanging out with guys that were in the Marines, you know, guys that were in the Army. Because you just have that like, you know, instant bond kind of, you know, and it's almost like those organizations, well, I shouldn't say they're not necessary because I feel like they still do great things, and I feel guilty for not joining them, to be honest with you, but I've never felt like that draw enough, you know.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's been about 2 years now. Thanks.